Lecture 2, Facility Site and Design. We'll talk about facility design construction of varying types. As we talk about location for facility builds, realtors will say location, 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 very critically important. You'll see some of the major facilities around the world are in key areas where there are a lot of population of people, folks who will attend arenas, buy tickets, and support the facility there. Very important to consider. And when people invest that amount of money into a sport facility, they do want it to be successful. And that's one of the keys, is location of where the build's going to occur. You'll see many sports facilities in urban locations. When I say urban, I mean general locations in downtown areas where things are accessible, restaurants, hotels, those sorts of things that will enhance the growth and revenue stream for the facility. So when we look at SWOT analysis, being able to determine when we're looking at first building, some things that you'll see on a SWOT analysis is strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. When we look at strength, we talk about building the facility. What's the strength of building the facility in general? What causes you to want to do the build? On the weakness, factors that would inhibit your build. Opportunities would be in varying forms. When you're looking at building a sport facilities, the opportunities usually are endless. Those are usually really easy to identify. And then threats. What's the competition to that facility in the surrounding areas? What would inhibit your revenue stream growth and potential long-term growth? So design, why is design so important in a facility build? We talked about location being key, being able to support the facility once it's built, critically important. We talk about community involvement. You do want people to support your facility by purchasing tickets to come in, support the teams that are tenants in the facility. Those teams, whoever they would be, would most often go out in the community and support community events and have community engagement. Building bridges within the community would be a key aspect of a sport facility. And then there's also aesthetic value to that. You see some very magnificent looking buildings around areas and they catch your eye. The same is true for sport facilities. There are many sport facilities that are being built that have a very high aesthetic value and don't necessarily blend into the environment. They stick out, which is good. It brings attention to the facility. And that some key examples of that, see Staples Center here in Los Angeles. From the top, you see aerial views of red lettering on the top of the facility. Highlights Staples Center at night. It glows in the dark, almost, people say. And that's something that stands out to a crowd when you're driving by or on the highways. There are also other collegiate examples of that. USC here in Los Angeles built a new center called the Galen Center. It's right off of a freeway. So the view from a freeway, you see this beautiful building and you want to know what it is. And that's the key on facility site design for sport facilities. The recreational opportunities involved are exactly that. It offers more than just housing the tenant, but there's other opportunities that come with that. Oftentimes, sport facilities will rent out to local community events, recreation departments, colleges, universities, and schools to be able to utilize the facility and bring in extra revenue, but also give people an opportunity to walk in the door and to see what the facility is about. Most often that leads to additional revenue streams because those folks will come back for games and upcoming events. A lot of marketing, cross-marketing occurs there if they're smart, to be able, when those folks come in the door, to hand them marketing materials to draw them back in. And as we talk about green facilities, LEED certified facilities, you can look up LEED certifications on your own, and you'll see as of 2013, there's 25 professional sports venues are currently LEED certified. LEED certification comes in different forms, different levels, and you'll see what those are. But when we talk about, as of 2013, some of the sport facilities that are LEED certified are American Airlines Arena, Levi Stadium, which we've talked about previously, and Soldier Field. There are many more to that. Those are just examples of things around our nation. But LEED certification is a way of the future. Many facilities, as they look at the build, are going green, and they're getting a lot of support and garnering support from the community at large. The concept of carbon footprint is something that folks look at when approving or denying requests to build sport facilities. Having a LEED certified facility certainly does provide relief for people who are interested in providing less of a carbon footprint in the environment. So Green Sports Alliance is a nonprofit organization that supports the development of green facilities, and you'll see them as you look up more and research more on green facilities. They're all over the development of those facilities. So as you're looking at a build, facility site and design, we talk about feasibility studies. Those are in-depth studies that occur over a period of time. Usually it's months to years, talking about the feasibility of success for a facility. Included in that are permits required by city, state, and national at times. Site information is required, detailed analysis of the build, and then the regulations involved have to do with, again, city, state, national requirements for building a facility. And we talked previously about community involvement, and that's pretty key in success of a facility. And it really is key in success of the approval of the build. Analysis involves interacting with community leaders, lots of communication, and letting people understand the goal of the facility itself is not just to promote a professional sports team or a collegiate sports team, but to also give access to the community and to see the benefits within the community. Those are critically important for people for voting. When it's time to vote these bills in, people will support heavily when they see the involvement and how much it affects them. Affordability is always key. We talked about Levi Stadium, and the initial project build was one number, and then it jumped to a completely different number when the build is done. That's really, really common. It is not uncommon for builds to have a projected number and that number to exceed budget by the time the build is done. The goal to that is to present a number that's affordable to the community if it involves tax dollars, and to present a number and try your best to attain that number or come below budget, which very rarely happens, but that's the goal when you build a facility. Restrictions could be a variety of things. We talk about what would restrict a build. There are a lot of red tape that could occur. In some instances, it could be protected land rights. Other areas where the build was approved at one point and the build stopped due to conflicting vendors. There are a lot of restrictions that can occur. Aesthetic value is pretty key. One thing in approval of a build and site design is getting a great architecture to bring you something to life off of a drawing. In your example, you'll see on the screen here, two examples is the National Aquatic Center in Beijing, China, and the National Stadium. Those were built in around 2007-ish. Completion was done for 2008 Olympics. The National Aquatic Center is also affectionately known as the Water Cube, and it's the blue one that you see. And if you get a closer look at that, you'll see that it's actually designed to look like water drops. And if you Google search the design of that building, you'll get a closer look at it. It's rather interesting. And it is a 50-meter pool inside with 10 lanes, capacity of 17,000 people, and that build for that building alone was $140 million. The second building you see there, or the venue you see, is National Stadium, affectionately known as the Bird's Nest. That's where opening ceremonies were held, and you saw that with track and field and other venues that were, other sport events that were in that venue. That is a grass surface, capacity of 80,000 people, and that build was $423 million. It's bigger by far, and it housed the opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies, so it was a marquee venue for Beijing for the 2008 Olympics. We move on to talk about the Staples Center. Being in Los Angeles, the Staples Center was built in 1999. I was fortunate enough to work for the Los Angeles Lakers at the time of this build and was able to be around during the transition from the other venue, which was called the Forum in Los Angeles, over to the new arena called the Staples Center. The cost of this arena is $375 million, 20,000 people seating for basketball, 18,118 for hockey. 2,500 club seats, 2,000 platinum seats, over 500 accessible seats, and then 192 luxury and party suites. In addition, Staples Center has won many awards of Arena of the Year and has been highlighted in many venue magazines and sport management magazines just due to the high quality of the build. And you're talking, it's over almost 15, 16 years old now. And the building is still immaculate, very well kept, and is still highly acclaimed for concerts and sporting events and other events that come into town. So it is well used, and it is well set into downtown Los Angeles. There's been shopping district, hotel district that has been built around the Staples Center, and that was completed, maybe 7-8 years ago, called Downtown Live. And it is around the Staples Center, is meant to bring in more guests, to have more accessibility to hotels and restaurants to accommodate folks who are coming to the Staples Center. So we talk about size of the facility and then what influences that decision. You see, as we talked about Beijing, China, the size of the facility for the Bird's Nest is 80,000 people capacity versus the Aquatic Center with 17,000 people capacity. So depending on the use of the facility really determines the size of the facility. What sporting events are going to be held there determines the size, and it of course needs to accommodate seating and parking and all of the other luxuries that come with that. So those are some of the decisions that would influence that. We talk about zoning, user needs, community impact, and environmental considerations. You'll see a sample map on your screen, and that is inclusive of parking and other adjacent property that houses the facility itself. So those are things that would influence the site and design of a facility. When we talk about total design of a facility, it needs to include everything. I have seen facilities where they're beautiful on the outside, beautiful on the inside, but when you look at the detail, you wonder why they missed that. I'll give you an example of a community center that designed a gymnasium, a double-wide basketball gymnasium, basketball courts, could be used for volleyball, indoor soccer, indoor football, but it was designed for basketball. Beautiful facility, but when it came time for seating, they did not size the court correctly to accommodate bleachers at all. So the basketball courts were traditional regulation size courts, all the way wall to wall with no seating accommodations. And after the fact, the design was done, the build was done, people had complained, how do we put seats in here? But the design was done by then and the build was completed. That really was a snafu in the design of it. And I've always used that as an example when I talk to classes about design includes everything. That's everything. Making sure locker rooms, concessions, office space, storage, seating. If you're going to put in bleachers into a facility that's going to have spectators, it's critically important in the build. And before you get to the build, you have to design it. So I've always used that as an example, and that's something that is really critical to the success or really the failure of the design itself. So in summary, we talked about history of facilities, facility management, site design, and facility construction. And there are so many examples of wonderfully designed facilities, LEED certified. Going green is the new thing. And there are a lot of examples that you see and that you know of in your hometown. And you can find more and more facilities being built every year. Some of the things we talked about in the last lecture is to date, and what our textbook says is not really up to date because of the booming build that you see in sport facilities. That's collegiate builds, professional builds, and even community builds and Olympic builds. Olympic builds are continually moving forward as the designs are already occurring for the next round of Olympics and the next 2 rounds of Olympics, actually. And that's something that's a top piece for architects to want to jump on board and to get a bid in to do sports design, sport facilities. So hope you enjoyed that lecture, and we'll move on to the next one.